The courtroom fell silent as Judge Judy Sheindlin stared at the case file before her. A $100,000 wedding turned into a legal nightmare when bride Melania Mitchell sued her ex-fiancé James Cooper over their cancelled wedding expenses. What started as a dream celebration transformed into one of the most shocking cases in Judge Judy's career, leading to a verdict that left everyone stunned. This is the story of love, betrayal, and the true cost of saying, "I do." Melania Mitchell first noticed James Cooper on a crisp September morning at their office building's bustling coffee shop. Their meet-cute happened when both reached for the last blueberry muffin, leading to shared laughter and an impromptu breakfast together. Melania, a 31-year-old marketing executive, found herself drawn to James's confident demeanor and ambitious spirit. James, 34, working in investment banking, was immediately captivated by Melania's quick wit and infectious smile. Their relationship progressed at lightning speed. Within 3 months, they were inseparable. Their co-workers watched their romance blossom over lunch breaks and after-work gatherings. Both came from upper-middle-class families, shared similar values, and dreamed of building a life in the suburbs. Their parents approved, their friends celebrated, and everything seemed perfect. The proposal came during their 6-month anniversary dinner at Manhattan's exclusive Sky View restaurant. James went all out. A private terrace overlooking Central Park, a string quartet, and a 2.5-carat diamond ring that cost him 3 months' salary. Melania said yes before he finished asking the question. That night, they talked about their future until sunrise, planning their dream wedding between kisses and champagne toasts. The first crack in their perfect love story appeared during the initial wedding planning meeting. Melania envisioned a grand celebration at the prestigious Windsor Hotel, with 300 guests, a 10-piece band, and a wedding dress from a famous designer. James nodded along, but his smile didn't reach his eyes when the wedding planner mentioned the preliminary budget of $100,000. Their different approaches to money became increasingly apparent. Melania, whose father had promised to contribute $30,000, believed in creating once-in-a-lifetime memories regardless of cost. James, despite his 6-figure salary, preferred saving for their future home. He suggested a more intimate celebration at a countryside venue, but Melania insisted this was their one chance to have their dream wedding. The engagement announcement in the local newspaper sparked a flood of congratulations and heightened expectations. Melania's mother, Barbara, a social butterfly in their upper-class community, began sharing elaborate wedding plans with her country club friends. James's parents, more reserved in nature, expressed concern about the growing expense list but kept their thoughts mostly to themselves. Their contrasting views on wedding expenses started affecting other aspects of their relationship. Small disagreements about invitation designs escalated into heated arguments about financial responsibility. The final venue deposit deadline loomed, and tension replaced their once easy compatibility. Melania interpreted James's financial hesitation as a lack of commitment to their future. James saw Melania's insistence on an extravagant celebration as a red flag about their long-term compatibility. The breaking point came during what should have been a simple dinner to finalize the guest list. The discussion about table arrangements somehow transformed into a bitter argument about values, priorities, and trust. That night, they both realized their fairy tale romance had transformed into something neither of them recognized. The next morning, Melania woke up to a text message that would change everything and set them on a path toward Judge Judy's courtroom. The Windsor Hotel's grand ballroom deposit of $15,000 marked the beginning of their financial nightmare. Melania had already signed the contract, assuring James that her father's $30,000 contribution would cover the major venues. But the expenses multiplied faster than autumn leaves falling in Central Park. The wedding planner's spreadsheet told the story of their growing divide. Designer wedding dress, $12,000. Custom-made invitations with gold foil and hand calligraphy, $4,500. Premium open bar package, $18,000. 10-piece band and ceremony string quartet, $15,000. Luxury florals and decorations, $22,000. Photography and videography package, $8,500. Wedding cake from a celebrity baker, $3,000. Hair, makeup, and bridal party expenses, $5,000. The numbers kept climbing, reaching far beyond their initial budget. James watched their joint wedding savings account drain with each new vendor deposit. His suggestions for cost-cutting measures met fierce resistance. When he proposed switching to a DJ instead of the band, Melania accused him of trying to turn their dream wedding into a backyard barbecue. His recommendation to trim the guest list sparked a 3-day Cold War, with Melania's mother Barbara calling to remind him about family obligations and social expectations. The tension spilled into their daily lives. James started working later hours, avoiding the evening phone calls with vendors. Melania interpreted his absence as abandonment, leaving passive-aggressive notes about unsigned contracts and approaching deadlines. Their romantic dinner dates transformed into business meetings, filled with spreadsheets and arguing over the difference between essential and optional expenses. Their families took sides. Melania's father, though concerned about the mounting costs, continued writing checks to keep his daughter's dream alive. James's parents voiced their disapproval during Sunday dinners, suggesting the money would be better spent on a house down payment. The divide between the families grew wider with each passing week. The breaking point arrived with the flower arrangement decision. The florist presented two options: a moderate package at $8,000 or the premium design at $22,000. Melania, enchanted by the premium package's promise of imported roses and crystal vases, couldn't understand James's hesitation. For James, the $14,000 difference represented their future children's education fund being spent on flowers that would wilt within days. Their argument in the florist's shop turned heads. Melania accused James of sabotaging their wedding, while James questioned whether she cared more about the perfect wedding than their actual marriage. The florist awkwardly offered them time to discuss, but the damage was done. They left separately, Melania to cry on her mother's shoulder, James to seek advice from his best man. The next week brought more financial surprises. The wedding planner revealed additional costs: welcome bags for out-of-town guests, $3,500, a morning after brunch, $6,500, and transportation for the wedding party, $2,000. James discovered Melania had opened a secret credit card to cover expenses he had vetoed, already accumulating $23,000 in charges. Their final meeting with the wedding planner became an intervention. The total expenses had ballooned to $128,000, with $98,000 already committed through various contracts and deposits. James's financial breaking point coincided with an emotional one. Looking at the massive spreadsheet of expenses, he no longer recognized the woman he had proposed to 6 months earlier. Melania, meanwhile, couldn't understand James's reluctance. In her mind, they both earned good salaries, and their families could help. She saw his financial concerns as a reflection of his commitment level, wondering if he was looking for an excuse to back out. Every discussion about money turned into an argument about love, trust, and their future together. The situation reached its climax when James discovered Melania had withdrawn $20,000 from their joint savings account for additional vendor deposits without consulting him. The trust between them shattered like a dropped champagne glass. That evening, he sent the text message that would lead them to Judge Judy's courtroom, setting in motion a legal battle that would stun everyone involved. The text message that ended their engagement was simple: "I can't do this anymore. The wedding is off." Melania read those words at 11:43 p.m. while sitting among scattered wedding magazines and vendor contracts in their half-packed apartment. Her first call to James went straight to voicemail. So did the 2nd, 3rd, and 20th. She spent that night alternating between tears and anger, surrounded by her maid of honor and sister, who rushed over after receiving her panic call. The $12,000 wedding dress hung in the corner like a ghost, its presence mocking the dreams that were crumbling around her. The next morning brought chaos. James had already contacted the wedding planner to cancel all remaining vendor appointments. He'd also frozen their joint wedding account, which still contained $45,000 of their combined savings. His email to Melania listed his reasons: the unauthorized credit card charges, the hidden vendor contracts, the drained savings account, and most importantly, their fundamental disagreement about financial responsibility. Melania's father took immediate action, calling their family lawyer. The cancellation had come just 8 weeks before the wedding date. Nearly $100,000 in deposits and payments had already been made. Some vendors offered partial refunds, others cited their no-refund policies. The Windsor Hotel kept their entire $15,000 deposit. The florist refused to return the $12,000 advance payment. The band required their 50% booking fee of $7,500. Their family's attempts at mediation failed spectacularly. A meeting at Melania's parents' house turned into a shouting match between the mothers. Barbara accused James of leading her daughter on, while James's mother called Melania a spoiled princess who cared more about Instagram photos than marriage. The fathers sat in uncomfortable silence, watching 30 years of friendship dissolve over wedding flowers and venue deposits. James offered to split the non-refundable deposits, proposing they each take a $25,000 loss. Melania refused. In her mind, he had not only broken her heart but also destroyed her dream wedding and damaged her family's reputation. Their social circle buzzed with gossip. Friends took sides. Their shared social media photos disappeared one by one, untagged and deleted, erasing their digital history together. 3 weeks after the cancellation, Melania received a certified letter from James's lawyer. It outlined his version of events, focusing on her unauthorized spending and breach of their verbal agreements about wedding costs. The letter offered a final settlement of $30,000, less than a third of the total expenses. Melania's response came through her own lawyer. She wanted the full amount of $98,754.33, down to the last penny spent on personalized wedding favors. The situation reached an impasse. Neither side would budge. Their lawyers' fees mounted as quickly as their wedding expenses had. Then Melania's maid of honor mentioned a possible solution: Judge Judy's Courtroom. The show was known for handling relationship disputes, especially unusual cases involving wedding disasters. More importantly, both parties would be compensated for appearing, and the show would pay any judgment amount awarded. Melania submitted their story to the show's producers, detailing the whirlwind romance, elaborate proposal, and financial catastrophe that followed. James initially refused to participate, but the prospect of ending the conflict and having the show cover any potential judgment changed his mind. Within weeks, they received their court date. As Melania packed for the flight to Los Angeles, she looked at their engagement photos still sitting on her bedside table. The happy couple smiling back at her seemed like strangers now. She tucked the photo into her evidence folder, along with pages of receipts, contracts, and bank statements. Tomorrow, she would face James again, this time with Judge Judy Sheindlin deciding their fate. The Los Angeles studio lights blazed overhead as Melania Mitchell and James Cooper stood at their respective podiums. Judge Judy Sheindlin entered the courtroom, her petite frame commanding immediate attention. She opened the case file, her reading glasses perched on her nose, studying the documents with her characteristic intensity. "This is a case of broken promises and broken bank accounts," Judge Judy began, her voice sharp. "Miss Mitchell is suing her former fiancé, Mr. Cooper, for $98,754.33 in wedding expenses. Mr. Cooper countersues for $20,000, claiming unauthorized use of joint funds." Melania spoke first, her voice trembling slightly. She detailed their engagement, the initial budget discussions, and how James had agreed to her vision of a dream wedding. Judge Judy interrupted her narrative, demanding specific dates and amounts. Melania produced a meticulously organized binder of expenses, color-coded by category. "Your Honor, we agreed to split the wedding costs equally," Melania explained. "My father contributed $30,000, and I put in my savings. James withdrew from the planning and canceled everything just 8 weeks before the wedding date." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "Miss Mitchell, are you telling me you spent nearly $100,000 on a wedding that never happened? Do you think that's reasonable?" Melania defended her choices, pointing to James's salary and their lifestyle. She revealed text messages where James had approved certain vendors, emails discussing their plans, and photos of them together at various wedding appointments. Judge Judy turned her attention to James. "Mr. Cooper, you're a banker. When did you realize this wedding was turning into a financial disaster?" James stood straight, his banker's composure evident. "Your Honor, I agreed to a wedding, not a financial suicide pact. The initial budget was $60,000. Melania kept adding expenses without consulting me. She opened a secret credit card and drained our joint savings account." The judge demanded bank statements. James provided documentation showing the progression of expenses, including the unauthorized withdrawal of $20,000 from their joint account. He explained how Melania had signed contracts without his knowledge, often using his income to secure vendor agreements. "She told vendors I earned $225,000 annually to justify the expenses," James revealed. "While that's true, she didn't mention her own credit card debt or the fact that we were supposed to be saving for a house." Judge Judy interrupted. "Miss Mitchell, did you withdraw $20,000 from the joint account without Mr. Cooper's permission?" Melania's confidence wavered. "Yes, but those were for deposits we had discussed. The vendors needed commitments." discussed or agreed to? Judge Judy pressed. There's a difference between talking about something and agreeing to it. The courtroom tensed as Melania's mother Barbara was called to testify. She defended her daughter's choices, arguing that James had led them to believe he was fully committed to the wedding plans. Judge Judy cut through her emotional testimony. Mrs. Mitchell, did it ever occur to you or your daughter that spending $22,000 on flowers might be excessive? Barbara's response about social expectations and family reputation drew one of Judge Judy's famous eye rolls. This isn't about keeping up with the Kardashians, the judge snapped. This is about two people who couldn't communicate about money before making a lifetime commitment. The wedding planner's testimony proved crucial. She provided emails showing James's growing concerns about costs and Melania's dismissal of those concerns. The planner revealed how Melania had asked her to withhold certain expenses from James, creating separate spreadsheets that showed lower totals. Your Honor, the planner testified, I expressed concern about the budget several times. Miss Mitchell insisted Mr. Cooper had agreed to everything. When I tried to discuss it with him directly, she asked me to only communicate with her. Judge Judy's questioning grew more pointed. She focused on specific expenses: the $12,000 designer dress, the $4,500 invitations, the $18,000 bar package. Each item was scrutinized, with Melania struggling to justify the costs while James presented alternative options he had suggested. The evidence mounted: hidden receipts, unauthorized charges, ignored vendor warnings about deposit deadlines. Melania's defense crumbled as Judge Judy systematically exposed the pattern of financial deception. Even her father's testimony about their family's social obligations fell flat under the judge's scrutiny. Mr. Mitchell, Judge Judy addressed Melania's father, you contributed $30,000 to this wedding. Did you ever ask your daughter how the rest would be paid for? His uncomfortable silence spoke volumes. As the case progressed, the true picture emerged. Beyond the visible expenses were hidden costs: the secret credit card charges for extra decorations, the additional beauty treatments, the surprise fireworks display deposit. Each revelation strengthened James's position while weakening Melania's claim. The turning point came when Judge Judy discovered the couple had never attended premarital counseling or discussed their financial philosophies in detail. You were willing to spend $3,000 on a cake but wouldn't invest $500 in counseling, she asked incredulously. That tells me everything I need to know about priorities in this relationship. The final hour of testimony focused on the aftermath: Melania's attempts to salvage some vendor relationships, James's offers to split certain non-refundable deposits, and the devastating impact on both families' long-standing friendship. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Judy prepared to deliver her verdict, both parties anxiously awaiting the resolution of their financial and emotional nightmare. Judge Judy removed her glasses, fixing both parties with her signature penetrating stare. The studio lights seemed to intensify as she prepared to deliver her verdict. Melania gripped her podium while James stood perfectly still, his banker's composure showing the first signs of cracking. What I see before me today is not just a case about wedding expenses, Judge Judy began. This is about trust, responsibility, and the foundation of marriage itself. Miss Mitchell, you're suing Mr. Cooper for $98,754.33 in wedding expenses. Mr. Cooper countersues for $20,000 in unauthorized withdrawals. I've listened carefully to both sides, and here's what I've learned. She held up the thick folder of receipts. This case represents everything wrong with modern wedding culture. Both of you got caught up in a spiral of spending that had nothing to do with marriage and everything to do with showing off. The judge turned to Melania first. Miss Mitchell, you deliberately hid expenses from your fiancé. You opened secret credit cards, made unauthorized withdrawals, and manipulated vendors into believing Mr. Cooper approved expenses he knew nothing about. Your actions show a complete disregard for financial partnership, the very foundation of a successful marriage. Melania's eyes welled with tears, but Judge Judy wasn't finished. You claim Mr. Cooper agreed to everything, but your own evidence contradicts this. Text messages show him repeatedly expressing concern about costs. Emails reveal your dismissal of his suggestions for more reasonable alternatives. You weren't planning a wedding. You were staging a production with someone else's money. Turning to James, her tone shifted slightly. Mr. Cooper, while you demonstrated more financial responsibility, you're not blameless. You saw the red flags early but chose to avoid confrontation. Instead of having direct conversations about money, you worked late, missed appointments, and let the situation spiral out of control. Your passive approach contributed to this disaster. Judge Judy shuffled through some papers. The law regarding broken engagements is clear. Wedding expenses should typically be split between parties when an engagement ends. However, this case has several complicating factors that influence my decision. The courtroom held its breath as she continued. First, the unauthorized withdrawal of $20,000 from the joint account. Second, the secret credit card opened in both names. Third, the deliberate concealment of expenses. And finally, the breach of trust that made this wedding impossible in the first place. She looked directly at Melania. Miss Mitchell, your claim of $98,754.33 is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to repay Mr. Cooper $20,000 for the unauthorized withdrawal from your joint account. Melania gasped audibly. Her mother, sitting in the gallery, let out a small cry of protest. Additionally, Judge Judy continued, you are solely responsible for any outstanding credit card debt incurred for wedding expenses without Mr. Cooper's knowledge or consent. Mr. Cooper, your name is to be removed from any joint credit accounts opened during the engagement. The judge wasn't finished. However, Mr. Cooper, you agreed to certain expenses in writing. You're responsible for half of the properly documented and mutually agreed upon deposits, which total $32,000. That means you owe Miss Mitchell $16,000. Judge Judy did the final calculations. Subtracting this amount from what Miss Mitchell owes you, Miss Mitchell is ordered to pay Mr. Cooper $4,000. The verdict hit Melania like a physical blow. Not only had she lost her dream wedding, but she was now being ordered to pay her ex-fiancé. Let me be clear about something, Judge Judy added, her voice softening slightly. The real tragedy here isn't the lost deposits or wasted money. It's that two people who claim to love each other never learn to communicate about something as fundamental as finances. Miss Mitchell, your dream wedding became more important than your actual marriage. Mr. Cooper, your inability to confront problems head-on would have caused issues long after the wedding. She closed the case file decisively. Perhaps the best thing that could have happened to both of you was this wedding not taking place. You've learned an expensive lesson about trust, communication, and priorities. I hope you both take this experience and grow from it. As the bailiff prepared to escort them out, Judge Judy offered one final observation. Marriage isn't about one perfect day. It's about all the imperfect days that follow and how you handle them together. Neither of you was ready for that commitment. Case dismissed. The gallery buzzed with whispers as Melania and James left the courtroom through separate doors. The verdict would soon become one of Judge Judy's most talked-about decisions, sparking nationwide discussions about wedding expenses, relationship transparency, and the true meaning of marriage preparation. 6 months after Judge Judy's verdict, the Windsor Hotel's grand ballroom hosted another wedding. Melania sat in her car across the street, watching guests arrive for someone else's perfect day. She didn't feel the expected pang of regret. Instead, she felt something unexpected: gratitude. The nationally televised court case had changed her life, but not in the way she'd feared. After the initial embarrassment faded, Melania found herself flooded with messages from other couples who had faced similar situations. Her Instagram account, once filled with wedding planning updates, transformed into a platform for financial literacy and relationship advice. She started a blog called Before You Say I Do, sharing her hard-learned lessons about love, money, and communication. James's life took its own transformative turn. The case's publicity led to an unexpected career opportunity, a position at a financial advisory firm specializing in premarital financial counseling. His first-hand experience with wedding financial disasters made him uniquely qualified to help other couples navigate the complicated waters of merging lives and bank accounts. Their families slowly rebuilt their friendship, though holiday gatherings remained separate. Barbara, Melania's mother, underwent her own evolution. She became an advocate for practical wedding planning at her country club, often telling young couples, the marriage matters more than the wedding. The $22,000 flower budget became her cautionary tale. The wedding industry itself felt the ripples of Judge Judy's verdict. Local wedding planners began requiring couples to sign financial disclosure agreements. Some venues started offering scaled-down essentials packages alongside their premium options. Premarital financial counseling became a trending topic in bridal magazines. Melania used her $4,000 payment to James as her first investment in a financial literacy course. She learned about budgeting, investing, and the importance of emergency funds. The designer wedding dress that never made it down the aisle was sold to a consignment shop, funding her website development. James met someone new at a financial wellness seminar, an accountant who shared his views on fiscal responsibility. Their first date conversation about investment strategies and retirement planning would have bored Melania to tears, but it sparked a connection that felt more authentic than their whirlwind romance ever had. 1 year after the verdict, Melania received an unexpected email from James. He thanked her for the unintentional push toward his new career path and shared how their story had helped his clients avoid similar mistakes. Her reply was simple but sincere. "We needed different things to grow. Thank you for ending it before we made an even bigger mistake." The case became required viewing in several marriage preparation courses. Relationship counselors used it to demonstrate the importance of financial compatibility and open communication. Judge Judy's verdict was cited in similar cases across the country, setting an unofficial precedent for handling wedding expense disputes. Melania's father framed the judgment document in his office, not as a reminder of failure, but as proof that expensive lessons often lead to priceless wisdom. The $30,000 he had contributed to the wedding was eventually matched by Melania and invested in her growing financial education business. The final twist came when a major banking institution hired both Melania and James to create a financial literacy program for engaged couples. Their past relationship drama became a powerful teaching tool, showing that the path to lasting love requires more than just romantic compatibility. As Melania drove away from the Windsor Hotel that evening, she glanced at her blog's latest notification: another 1,000 subscribers. Her next post would be titled, "The $100,000 Wedding That Never Was, and Why It Was Worth Every Penny." Not for the money spent, but for the lessons learned and the lives changed by one judge's wisdom about what really matters when two people decide to share their lives.